It's late April and the leaves are just starting to come out on a lot of the trees here. And I wanted to update everybody on the greenhouse that we started about 7 years ago. Rebuild the rocket mass stove a couple of times. The first time I used the wrong kind of pipe, and I was trying to use the space as a sauna, and I was really getting the fires burning hot, and it caused the pipes to collapse and they didn't like that. So I had to dig the whole thing out and then replace them with some stainless steel pipe that was designed for that. So one of the things that I did was bought an old wood stove off Craigslist and had a friend cut off the bottom and the back, and then we went ahead and did all the brickwork, built this rocket mass heater where the exhaust goes up into the barrel and down the other pipe, and then it goes through the wall into like a big Pringles can that we put together full of it's 5 55-gallon drums, and then it exhausts out of the other end and then goes back through the barrel and up out the roof. And that heats this bench inside the greenhouse, and it creates a heated thermal mass. So in order to generate enough draft for this thing to start, I have a fan on a timer, and it's a crank timer. I just give it about 10 minutes. I put my paper in, packed full of wood, and light it, and I let it burn until it burns out, and the timer will shut off automatically after 10 minutes, which is usually too long. If I'm in there working, I'll shut it off when I leave after about 5 or 6 minutes, but it can run for 10 minutes and it's fine. So I just need that fan to get it going. Once the pipe is hot and everything, it'll draft just beautifully. I start everything in February and March and April in flats, and then in my seed starting table. And then once they're sprouted, oftentimes I'll repot them into 4-inch pots and then put them in this other area that's on top of this heated thermal mass. And it's kind of a greenhouse within the greenhouse. I just took these clear shower curtains and put them up so that I could close it off, and that heat just radiates out of the bench. Keeps it about 10 degrees warmer in those racks than it is in the greenhouse. But it also heats the greenhouse, and we can keep it above 45 degrees throughout the winter with about 4 cords of wood. And that we had about a week of minus 33 was the coldest that it got during that week. Initially, when we built the greenhouse, my intention was to have it be an aquaponics greenhouse, and I did work with that for a while, and I put the fish tank in, and we had all the plumbing in and the pumps and the circulation, and the problem I had with it was there's an exceptional amount of humidity in there, and I never could really get the balance right. The plants weren't getting the nutrients that they needed in the aquaponics, and I don't know whether it was not enough fish or the type of fish that I was using, or I really don't know what the problems were, but it was not working very well for me. I'm happy with what we're done now. We're growing in the soil, and I used the same, we had made some troughs for the aquaponics, and I just drained the water out and then filled them with soil. And one of the things that we did, especially in the soil, is add a lot of biochar, and then we used compost and coconut coir. We have a worm bin in the back where we take all of our household compost and we put in the worm bin, and so we get lots of good earthworms and biology going, and add the compost on top of those beds. I'm starting them in the seed starting area, and then once they sprout, I put them in 4-inch pots and put them on the greenhouse within the greenhouse on these racks with the lights. And then from there, either I put them outside if it's going to be something that's going to be growing outside, and that doesn't usually happen until mid-May or early June, or I put them in the ground in the greenhouse. And mostly I grow my brassicas and greens and things like that in the greenhouse, in the ground, because we have a lot of cabbage moths in the area due to the agricultural activities we're surrounded by farms and grow a lot of canola here. And so we have enormous quantities of cabbage moss that'll just decimate all of my brassicas later in the summer if I don't protect them, and I find it too difficult to try and keep them covered and all that. So I pretty much just grow the brassicas. I start them in the fall in the greenhouse in the beds, and then they'll go fine up through midsummer in the greenhouse, and they're pretty protected that way. So the other thing that we grow in the greenhouse is I've got the fig tree in the corner, and then we've got a persimmon and an avocado tree that's doing incredibly, and I have some grapes that are like seedless grapes that are more of a zone 6, 7 type grape. And I have a Meyer lemon and a papaya tree that I'm hoping to put in a new greenhouse that I'm building. That'll be a different climate. So I'm really happy with the way the greenhouse worked out. I like the fact that it's buried in the ground partially. I feel like that really helps to keep the climate nice in here, even when it's freezing outside. I wish the space was a little bit bigger, but other than that, it's been an incredible space. Love spending time out here in the winter and all year round, really. And we also have made some changes to the terraces in the back. If you recall, we put in pallet fences or pallet retaining walls, and they were not the most attractive solution. And all the plants would lose their leaves in the fall, and it'd just be a bunch of pallets. And I really wanted something that looked a little bit nicer. So you can see where we started putting a cedar fence around. And it's also a retaining wall, so it's like a dual purpose thing. And so it's a little bit more complicated than your average cedar fence because of that. So we used unistrut that we sunk in concrete for all of the corner posts, and then actually used redwood for the posts and mounted those to the unistrut, bolted everything together, and then did horizontal redwood 2x4s and then cedar boards vertically. And before I put the cedar boards on, I put 2 inches of blue board insulation, just as something for the soil to press up against, so it wasn't right up against the boards. And it's working pretty good. I used, for the backfill, I wanted something that was lightweight and drained really well. So I used a lot of biochar and coconut coir, and I mixed those together and backfilled with that. And I don't know if you've worked with that type of a product, but it actually becomes like, it takes the shape of wherever you put it, and then it'll kind of become a solid mass. But it has really good drainage. And you don't want something that'll hold moisture and then freeze, and when it freezes, it'll expand, and it could push the fence right over. And this was the first winter that we went through with that system, and it worked great. So now we're going to go ahead and do the next 2 tiers so that we'll finish it out and it'll look a lot nicer. And the other one, it worked, and for the summer months it looked beautiful. It had lots of vines on it, and we had grapes growing on it, and I put all kinds of other plants and ferns, so it looked great during the summertime. But the rest of the year it was like a bunch of pallets. I think if I had just used biochar by itself, it might have been an issue with holding moisture and expanding. But as the mixture, plus the coconut coir gives it some more soil and drainage. It really gives it good drainage. And then I'm going to top dress that this spring with the compost out of the compost bin. And that has a lot of worms in it, and it'll add a lot of, just biology into that system. And then we'll plant it out, and I also collect the liquid out of the bottom of the compost. And then a lot of times I throw I have an air stone that I throw in the bottom of a bucket, and I'll add a little of that liquid and some water, and then I'll bubble it for about 24 hours, and then I put that on my garden. So my next project is, I just got started about 2.5 weeks ago, and we're adding on a spa room on the south side of our house, and it's going to have a polycarbonate roof over half of the room. It's 18 by 36. It'll have a very high ceiling, so much higher ceiling. It'll be about 18 feet high at the peak, which is, you know, in the greenhouse here is, it's about 10 feet high. So it'll be quite a bit higher so that we can accommodate some bigger trees, which is, and then also I'm going to have in-ground heating in the slab, and we're going to run a heating loop through the planters. There'll be large planters built into the floor. And so I'm going to move the persimmon tree up there, and probably the citrus and all the trees that can't freeze, the more subtropical trees. And I'm going to try a papaya. I have a small papaya in the greenhouse now that I'm hoping will last until I can get it transplanted up in the spa room. And that will be maintained at a warmer temperature, because a lot of those kind of plants don't like it really cold for so long that we get here in Montana. It's pretty cold for a long time, and it's overcast a lot. So that'll be another experiment. We'll see what happens. I don't know how the trees will respond, and how, you know, because one of our biggest challenges here is just the lack of light. You know, I live in a pine forest, and I'm in, 48 degrees north latitude, I think. So it's short days in the wintertime, really long days in the summertime. So it's not like the tropics at all. So we're going to see what we can do.